The negotiations had been going on for 3 months, and Daniel Carter was tired of listening to the same lies over and over again. He sat in the large conference room on Harmony Station and looked at the alien representatives across the table. They thought they were being clever, but Daniel could see right through them. The Velcrin delegate was a massive creature with skin that looked like crystal, and he kept slamming his forearms on the table whenever Daniel said something he did not like. Next to him sat the Horthian representative, and her scales kept changing colors to show her mood. Right now they were bright red, which meant she was angry, or trying to look intimidating. Daniel was not intimidated. Behind Daniel stood Captain Lisa Morgan, and she was the head of the security team that came with him from Earth. Her hand stayed near her weapon, even though weapons were supposed to be banned in this room. She had learned not to trust the aliens after 3 months of watching them lie and cheat and delay. Lieutenant Greg Palmer sat at a smaller table behind them, and his job was to record everything and send messages back to Earth. He had been very busy lately because the talks were falling. The Velcrin delegate, whose name was too complicated for humans to pronounce, properly stood up to his full height of almost 10 feet. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together when he spoke. Your species asks for too much human. You have only been in space for a short time, but you want the same rights as civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. This is not acceptable. Daniel kept his voice calm even though he wanted to shout. We are asking for basic rights. The same rights that every other species in this council has. We want to trade freely and travel through space without asking permission, and we want our colonies to be recognized as ours. These are not unreasonable requests. The Horthian representative leaned forward, and her scales shifted to a deeper red. You were given a great gift when we made contact with your primitive world. We offered you protection and guidance. We offered you client status under Velcrin oversight. Most species would be grateful for such an opportunity. Client status. Daniel hated those words. He had studied what happened to client species in the Galactic Council. They lost control of their resources and their military and eventually their culture. The Council called it protection, but it was really just slavery with better marketing. Earth had spent months researching the fate of other client species, and the results were clear. Once you accepted client status, you never got out. Your people became second-class citizens, and your worlds became resource colonies for the stronger species. Humanity had not fought and struggled and climbed out of their own violent history just to become slaves to aliens. We reject client status, Daniel said, and his voice was firm and clear. We have prepared alternative proposals that would allow for mutual trade agreements and cultural exchange while respecting the sovereignty of all parties involved. The Velcrin delegate made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not a pleasant sound. Sovereignty. You speak of sovereignty as if you have any power to enforce it. Your fleet consists of perhaps 100 ships, and they are crude and slow compared to our vessels. Your weapons are primitive, and your defenses are weak. You have no leverage in these negotiations. Daniel felt Lisa shift her weight behind him, and he knew she was getting angry. Greg was typing quickly and sending another update to Earth. The situation was deteriorating fast. The Velcrin continued speaking, and now his voice had a sharp edge to it. The Galactic Council has been patient with your species. We have tolerated your clumsy expansion into space. We have overlooked your violations of established territorial claims. We have given you chance after chance to accept your place in the natural order. But our patience has limits. The room went very quiet, and Daniel felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment they had all been dreading. This was when the threats would start. The Horthian representative stood up, and her voice became formal and cold. The Galactic Council hereby issues the following decree. Humanity will accept client status under Velcrin oversight within 30 of your Earth days. If you refuse, then we will implement an immediate quarantine of your space. Your ships will be seized. Your colonies will be occupied. Your homeworld will be blockaded until you comply with Council authority. Daniel stood up slowly and looked at each of the alien representatives. There were delegates from a dozen different species in the room, and they all looked at him with the same expression. They thought Earth would surrender. They thought humans would be scared into obedience like every other young species they had bullied over the centuries. They had no idea what was about to happen. You are threatening us, Daniel said quietly. We are informing you of reality, the Velcrin replied. You have 30 days to surrender your sovereignty, or we will take it by force. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact. Daniel looked back at Lisa, and she gave him a small nod. He looked at Greg, and the lieutenant was already sending the emergency codes back to Earth. Everything, that had just been said was being transmitted in real time to the military command on Earth and to the secret facilities scattered throughout human space. The message was simple and terrible. The talks had failed. War was coming. Ambassador Carter, Lisa whispered, and she leaned close so only he could hear. What are your orders? Daniel took a deep breath and thought about everything that had led to this moment. He thought about the years of preparation and the secret construction projects and the hidden fleets. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who were counting on him to keep them safe. He thought about the children who would grow up either free or enslaved, depending on what happened in the next few weeks. The choice was actually simple. Send the response, Daniel said quietly. Code terminus. Lisa's eyes went wide for just a second, but then she nodded and signaled to Greg. The lieutenant's fingers moved across his communication device, and he sent a single word back to Earth, in a code that only the top military commanders could decode. The word was simple, but it meant everything. It meant that humanity rejected the Council's ultimatum. It meant that Earth was going to fight. It meant that nothing would ever be the same again. The word was rejected. The Velcrin delegate actually laughed when he saw the humans conferring quietly. You are making a mistake that will cost your species everything. We have fought client species before. We know how this ends. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed within days. Your people will beg for mercy, and we will give you the same choice again, except the terms will be much worse. Daniel gathered his papers and prepared to leave the room. He looked at the Velcrin and his voice was steady. You are right about one thing. Nothing will be the same after this, but you are wrong about who will be begging for mercy. Brave words from a primitive, the Horthian said with contempt in her voice. Let me tell you something about humans, Daniel said, and he walked toward the door. We have been fighting each other for our entire history. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We have faced extinction dozens of times, and every time we found a way to survive. We are very good at one thing, and that is refusing to give up. You think you can scare us into surrender, but you have made a critical error in judgment. And what is that? The Velcrin asked. Daniel stopped at the door and looked back at the assembled aliens. You assumed we were weak because we are young. You assumed we would be easy to defeat because our technology looks primitive. But what you do not understand is that humans are most dangerous when we are cornered. And you just cornered all of humanity. The human delegation walked out of the conference room and the door sealed behind them. In the room, the alien delegates looked at each other with expressions of satisfaction and amusement. The Velcrin delegate sat back down and his crystal skin reflected the lights and patterns that indicated pleasure. That went exactly as predicted. They will accept client status within a week once they see our fleet. But Ambassador Kelvin, who represented one of the smaller and more peaceful species in the Council, did not look pleased. He had been quiet during the entire confrontation, but now he spoke up. I think we may have made a serious mistake. What mistake? The Horthian asked. The humans have no choice. They always have a choice, Kelvin said slowly. And we just gave them a very dangerous choice. Fight or surrender. Species that are given that choice sometimes surprise you. They cannot win, the Velcrin said with absolute confidence. Perhaps, Kelvin replied. But what if winning is not their goal? What if they simply want to make us regret threatening them? What if they decide that even if they lose, they will hurt us badly enough that we wish we had left them alone? The other delegates dismissed his concerns. They had done this before. They had threatened dozens of species over the centuries. It always ended the same way. A show of force and then surrender. The humans would be no different. They had no idea how wrong they were. Admiral Helen Price stood on the bridge of her ship and looked out at the stars beyond Neptune. Her vessel was called the Defiant, and it was the newest and most advanced battle carrier that humanity had ever built. Around her ship in the darkness of space waited 200 more warships of different sizes and types. They were all running silent with their engines barely producing any heat, and their communication systems turned off. They were hiding in the cold emptiness of the outer solar system and waiting for orders. Those orders had just arrived. Officer Kyle Bennett looked up from his station and his voice was steady despite the tension in the air. Admiral, we have received the transmission from Earth Command. Code terminus has been confirmed. Rules of engagement are now unrestricted. Helen felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. Unrestricted meant that humanity was taking off all the limits and all the rules. For decades, they had been preparing for this exact moment, and now it was here. The Galactic Council had pushed too hard and threatened too much, and now they would learn what happened when you cornered a species that refused to die quietly. "What is the status of our defense grid?" Helen asked, and her voice was calm, but everyone on the bridge could hear the edge in it. "Commander." Nina Ross checked her displays, and the screen showed hundreds of weapons platforms scattered throughout the solar system. All orbital platforms around Earth are active and ready. The lunar battery stations are online and fully armed. Mars Garrison reports full combat readiness. Every colony from the asteroid belt to the moons of Saturn is fortified and prepared for attack. "Good," Helen said. "And what about the evacuation protocols?" Nina's expression became more serious, and she spoke quietly, even though they were on a secure bridge. "The Exodus protocols are ready, Admiral. We can evacuate 65 million people to the deep Space Orcs if necessary. They are hidden in locations that the Council does not know about. If Earth falls, then humanity will survive. We will scatter into the darkness and we will never stop fighting." Helen nodded slowly. That was the nightmare scenario that kept her awake at night. Earth reduced to a burning rock and millions of humans fleeing into unknown space to become refugees and guerrillas. But it was better than extinction, and it was better than slavery. If the Council wanted to destroy humanity, then humanity would make sure that the survivors spent the rest of history making the Council regret that decision. "What about the Wraith fleet?" Helen asked, and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Nina leaned closer and spoke so quietly that only Helen could hear. "All 50 ships report ready. They are waiting at the designated coordinates in deep space. No one knows they exist except us." The Wraith fleet was humanity's secret weapon and their biggest gamble. 50 ships built in hidden shipyards in the Oort cloud, far beyond where anyone would think to look. The ships were crewed by volunteers who had trained in absolute secrecy for 15 years. They had technology that the Galactic Council thought was impossible. They had quantum communication systems that allowed instant contact across any distance. They had fusion torpedoes small enough to fit dozens on a single ship. And most importantly, they had artificial intelligence. The Council had banned AI centuries ago after some kind of machine uprising that nearly destroyed a dozen civilizations. Every species in the Council agreed to never build true artificial intelligence, and they enforced that ban ruthlessly. Humanity had smiled and nodded and agreed to follow the rules. Then they immediately started building AI in secret. Not the kind that went crazy and tried to kill everyone, but genuine machine intelligence that could think and adapt and coordinate fleet actions faster than any biological crew could manage. The Council thought AI was too dangerous to use. Humanity thought AI was too useful not to use. "Sir, we are receiving data from our surveillance network," Kyle reported. "Velcrin fleet movements detected. They are mobilizing 3 battle groups and heading toward human space." "Show me," Helen ordered, and the main display changed to show a tactical map of nearby space. Red icons appeared on the screen showing the position of enemy ships. The Velcrin were bringing 600 warships toward Earth, and they were not even trying to hide their approach. They expected an easy victory because they had done this before. They had threatened other species, and those species had always surrendered after seeing the size of the Council fleet. The Velcrin had no reason to think humans would be any different. "They are not even attempting stealth," Nina said with disgust in her voice. "They think we are going to surrender without a fight." Helen watched the red icons crawling across the display toward the blue icons that represented human space. She was doing calculations in her head about distances and timing and weapon ranges. "When will they reach our defensive perimeter?" 18 hours at their current speed, Kyle answered. "Then we have 18 hours to get everything ready," Helen said, and she turned to face her crew. "Begin Operation Midnight. Launch all surveillance drones." Throughout human-controlled space, thousands of small drones began moving into position. Each drone was no bigger than a refrigerator and carried only basic sensors and communication equipment. But together they formed a network that would give humanity something the Council had never faced before. Perfect information. Every single enemy ship within light hours of Earth would be tracked and monitored constantly. The Council had better weapons and better shields, but they had never fought an enemy that knew exactly where every single ship was at all times. "Drone network is fully deployed," Kyle reported after an hour of frantic work. "We have complete coverage of the approach routes." "Excellent," Helen said. "Now we wait for them to arrive. And when they do, we show them why threatening humanity was the biggest mistake they ever made. Down on Earth in the massive command center buried deep under the City of Geneva, the top military leaders from every nation were watching the same displays. Defense Minister Peter Graham stood in the center of the room and looked at the tactical screens. For the first time in all of human history, every nation on Earth was truly united, not because they wanted to be, but because they had no choice. The aliens did not care about human politics or human borders. They saw Earth as one primitive world that needed to be conquered. So humanity had finally put aside their differences and come together to face the common threat. The aliens still think we are centuries behind them in technology, said General Linda Hayes, who commanded all of Earth's ground forces. They think we are primitives playing with rockets. Let them think that, Peter said coldly. When you are underestimated, you have an advantage. The enemy makes mistakes because they do not take you seriously, and we are going to exploit every single mistake they make. Even with all our preparations, the numbers are against us, Linda said. 600 ships against our 200, and their ships are individually more powerful than ours. Then we do not fight them with numbers, and we do not fight them fairly, Peter replied. We fight them with deception and fear and tactics they have never seen before. We make them afraid to enter our space. We make them question every decision. We make them wish they had left us alone. Peter pulled up classified files on his screen that only a handful of people in the entire world were allowed to see. Initiate Project Prometheus. It is time to introduce the Council to human psychological warfare in orbit above Mars at a secret facility that officially did not exist. Technicians were making final preparations on something that would change everything. It was not a ship and it was not a bomb. It was a message, and it was about to be delivered in a way that the Galactic Council would never forget. The technicians worked carefully because what they were building was designed to terrify. Humans had spent thousands of years learning how to scare each other, and now they were going to use all that knowledge against an alien enemy. The Council thought they understood warfare. They thought it was about ships and weapons and tactics. They were about to learn that real warfare was about breaking the enemy's will to fight. Upload complete, one technician reported. The package is ready for deployment. Good, the facility commander said. When the Velkrin arrive, they are going to receive a very special welcome. And after they see what we have prepared, they are going to think twice about attacking Earth. Back on the Defiant, Helen was reading reports from intelligence services about the Council species. She was learning everything she could about their psychology and their culture and their fears. She needed to understand how they thought so she could exploit their weaknesses. The Council had been dominant for so long that they had become arrogant. They thought they were invincible. That arrogance was going to be their downfall. Admiral, Nina said quietly, do you really think we can win this? Helen looked at her second-in-command and considered the question carefully. Win is a complicated word. Can we defeat 600 ships with 200? Probably not in a straight fight. But we are not going to fight straight. Can we make them regret attacking us? Yes. Can we hurt them badly enough that they decide the cost is too high? Maybe. Can we survive long enough for them to reconsider? I think so, and if we cannot. Then we activate the Exodus protocols and we scatter into the galaxy, Helen said. And we spend the rest of human history making them pay for what they did. Either way, the Council is going to learn something important about our species. What is that? Helen smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. That humans are the most stubborn species in the galaxy. We do not give up. We do not surrender. And we never ever forget when someone threatens our home. The 18 hours passed slowly as both sides prepared for battle. The Velkrin fleet moved confidently toward Earth, expecting an easy victory. The human fleet waited in silence, preparing to show the aliens that this was not going to be like any battle they had fought before. The countdown continued, and everyone knew that when it reached 0, everything would change. Humanity was about to announce to the galaxy that they were not going to be pushed around anymore. The Velkrin battle group emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, exactly where they had planned to arrive. Fleet Commander Zethrin looked at the primitive star system on his displays and felt satisfied with how things were going. The intelligence reports had been very clear about what to expect. The humans had perhaps 100 combat vessels, and all of them used technology that was centuries behind Council standards. This military action would be finished within days, and then the humans would accept client status like every other species that had been foolish enough to resist. Begin scanning for defensive positions. Zethrin ordered his crew. and broadcast the surrender terms on all communication frequencies. Let the humans know they have one final chance to avoid destruction. His sensor officer was a younger Velcrin, whose antennae were still bright with youth. Commander, I am detecting significant orbital infrastructure around the third planet. There are multiple space stations and weapons platforms, and I am also detecting ships. Many ships, sir. Zethrin was not concerned by this news. How many ships are you detecting? Still scanning the system, Commander, but current count is approximately 200 contacts. All of them appear to be military vessels of various classes. 200 ships was more than intelligence had predicted, but it did not matter. Zethrin commanded 600 warships, and every single one of them was superior to anything the humans could build. The outcome was not in doubt. Maintain battle formation and begin advancing into the system. Launch the intimidation display as per standard protocol. The Velcrin fleet followed ancient council procedures that had been used for thousands of years. Every ship activated every sensor and every targeting laser and every weapon system at the same time. The display was designed to overwhelm primitive sensor equipment and show any enemy exactly how hopeless their situation was. It was psychological warfare at its most basic level, and it always worked. Species that saw the full might of a council fleet arrayed against them usually surrendered immediately. This time something very different happened. The human fleet did not scatter in panic. They did not break formation, and they did not retreat. Instead, every single human ship went completely dark. All their engines shut down, and all their communications stopped, and all their sensor emissions vanished. In less than 3 seconds, 200 human ships disappeared from Velcrin sensors as completely as if they had never existed. Where did they go? Zethrin demanded, and for the first time he felt a small touch of uncertainty. I do not know, sir, the sensor officer replied, and his antennae were now quivering with confusion. They were there, and now they are gone. All 200 ships have vanished from our sensors. That is impossible, Zethrin said angrily. Ships cannot just disappear. They must be using some kind of jamming technology. Increase sensor power and scan the entire region. The Velcrin fleet's powerful sensors swept across millions of cubic kilometers of space but found nothing. The human ships had somehow made themselves completely invisible to technology that could normally detect a small fighter from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Then the communication officer spoke up, and his voice was uncertain. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the humans. It is on an open channel, but it is not a surrender message. Play it, Zethrin ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and spoke in perfect Velcrin language. Velcrin fleet, this is Admiral Helen Price of the United Human Space Force. You have entered our territory with hostile intent, and you have threatened our homeworld. You are being given one opportunity to turn your ships around and leave this system. If you do not take this opportunity, then we will demonstrate why threatening humanity is a fatal mistake. Zethrin laughed, and the sound echoed through his bridge. Several of his crew members joined in the laughter. Demonstrate? You have 200 primitive ships against our 600 advanced warships. This is not a negotiation, human. This is an execution. Actually, Helen's voice replied calmly. We have more than 200 ships. You just cannot see the rest of them yet. Impossible, Zethrin said. Our sensors are the best in the galaxy. If there were more ships, we would detect them. Your sensors are excellent, Helen agreed. But they are designed to detect known technologies and known energy signatures and known drive systems. You have been fighting the same civilizations with the same technology for 10,000 years. Everything you build is designed to counter everything they build. But we are new. We have only been in space for a few generations. We do not play by your rules because we never learned them. We developed our technology in isolation, and we made choices that you never considered. Zethrin felt the first real touch of doubt, but he pushed it away. You are bluffing, human. You are trying to scare us with empty words. Am I bluffing? Helen asked. Let me prove otherwise. Look at your ship designated 427 in your third squadron on the starboard flank. The sensor officer quickly brought up the designated vessel on the main display. Sir, ship 427 shows normal status. All systems are operating within parameters, and there are no threats detected in that region. The Velcrin destroyer exploded. There was no warning of any kind. No incoming missile was detected, and no energy weapon fire was registered, and no threat appeared on any sensor. One moment the ship was functioning normally, and the next moment it was expanding cloud of debris and superheated gas. 300 Velcrin crew members died in an instant. What happened? Zethrin roared, and now fear was mixing with his anger. What destroyed that ship? Scanning the debris field, sir, the sensor officer said frantically. Impact signatures suggest multiple high-velocity kinetic projectiles, but we detected no launches and no incoming fire. The weapons appeared from nowhere. Helen's voice came through the speakers again. That was a demonstration. One of your ships is now destroyed. Your crew members are dead, and we fired that shot from a vessel that your sensors still cannot detect, from a range where you believe you are completely safe. Do you understand now that we are not bluffing? Zethrin stared at his displays, trying to understand what had just happened. How is this possible? I told you already, Helen said. We do not follow your rules. Now here is something else you should know about humans. When we are scared enough and when we are threatened enough, we become very creative. You have had the same technology for thousands of years. You refined it and perfected it, but you stopped innovating. We have been innovating constantly because we had to. Our own world was dangerous enough that we had to keep developing new ways to survive. So we built stealth systems that your sensors cannot detect. We built weapons that strike without warning. We developed tactics that you have never encountered. Another ship exploded, and then another. 3 more Velcrin vessels were destroyed in complete silence. Each one was killed by invisible attackers that left no trace. Return fire, Zethrin screamed. All ships maximum firepower. Saturate the entire region with weapons fire. The Velcrin fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles and kinetic rounds poured into the space where they thought the human ships might be hiding. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously and lit up the darkness with destruction, but every single shot hit nothing but empty space. The weapons found no targets and caused no damage except to waste ammunition. The invisible attacks continued. 4 more Velcrin ships were destroyed. Commander, we have now lost 11 vessels and we have not successfully targeted a single enemy ship, the tactical officer reported. We are fighting completely blind, Helen's voice returned. You are wasting your ammunition. We are not where you think we are. Here is your final warning. Leave this system now or we will continue destroying your ships one by one until you have no choice but to retreat. You came here expecting an easy victory, but you are learning that humans do not give easy victories to anyone. Zethrin's pride fought against his survival instinct. He was a council commander with decades of experience. He had won battles against pirates and rebels and client species. He could not be defeated by primitives who had barely learned to leave their own planet. But his ships kept dying and his weapons hit nothing and his sensors showed him no targets. Vreneth looked around the chamber at the frightened and angry faces of his fellow counselors. This changes our situation significantly. How does it change anything? The Talrith ambassador demanded. They are still outnumbered by thousands to 1. They have demonstrated capabilities we do not have, Vreneth said slowly. They penetrated our most secure facility and took control of our communications. They have hidden millions of their people where we cannot find them. They have built weapons that can destroy our ships without being detected. They have shown a willingness to fight to the last individual. And most importantly, they have shown they understand psychological warfare. What do you mean? Someone asked. That transmission was not really for us, Vreneth explained. It will be seen by every species in council space. It will be analyzed and discussed. Some species will start to wonder if the council can actually protect them. Some will start to question whether the council is really as strong as we claim. Some will start to think about resisting. The humans are not just fighting us militarily. They are fighting us politically. They are trying to undermine the very foundation of council authority. Ambassador Kelvin spoke up again. Perhaps that foundation deserves to be undermined. Perhaps we have grown corrupt and complacent over the centuries. Perhaps we need a species like humanity to remind us that strength alone does not justify domination. You speak of philosophy while our ships burn, the Velcrin representative snarled. I speak of reality, Kelvin replied. The reality is that we have encountered a species that refuses to submit and has the capability to hurt us badly. We can continue this war and possibly win, but the cost will be enormous. Or we can swallow our pride and offer them what they asked for in the first place. Equal treatment and respect. The debate continued for many more hours, but slowly a consensus began to form. Some called it wisdom, others called it cowardice. But the truth was that the Galactic Council had finally realized they had made a serious mistake. They had threatened a species that was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and now they had to decide whether to escalate or retreat. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the Velcrin retreat, and the massive chamber on the Council's capital world was filled with angry representatives from dozens of species. High Counselor Vreneth called the session to order, and his scales were showing colors that indicated deep concern. He had read Fleet Commander Zethran's report 3 times, and each time it seemed more impossible than the last. "We have reviewed the battle reports from the engagement at the human homeworld," Vreneth announced to the chamber. "The loss of 31 vessels to an enemy we could not detect is unprecedented in Council military history." The Talrith ambassador stood up on his 6 legs and his mandibles were clicking rapidly, which was a sign of extreme agitation. "Unprecedented? This is not just unprecedented, it is humiliating. A species that barely knows how to build starships has defeated a Council fleet. How is this possible?" The Velcrin representative tried to defend his species' honor. "They did not defeat us in honorable combat. They used coward tactics. They hid in the darkness and refused to face us in open battle. They struck from ambush like criminals." "They used tactics that worked," Vreneth said coldly. "Whether we consider those tactics honorable is irrelevant. What matters is that a client species has refused to submit and has proven they can inflict serious losses on Council forces. This creates a situation we have not faced in 3,000 years. A Korvax delegate whose tentacles were writhing with anger spoke next. "Then we destroy them completely. We assemble a true armada with thousands of ships. We overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers. We reduce their homeworld to ashes and make an example of them so that no other species ever dares to resist Council authority." Again, Ambassador Kelvin, who represented one of the smaller and more peaceful species in the Council, stood up slowly. "Do we truly want to set that precedent? If we resort to planetary destruction every time a species resists, then what kind of civilization are we? What separates us from barbarians? It makes us strong," the Velcrin representative said. "It makes us feared. The humans must learn their place in the natural order." "Have you considered," Kelvin said carefully, "that perhaps we are the ones who need to learn something? The humans asked for basic rights and equality. They asked to be treated with respect. We refused and we threatened them with enslavement. Can we truly be surprised that they responded with force? They are primitives," someone shouted from the back of the chamber. "Primitives who just destroyed 31 advanced warships without losing a single vessel of their own," Kelvin replied. "I have studied the engagement data carefully. The humans demonstrated technology we do not possess, stealth capabilities that defeat our best sensors, weapons that strike without any detectable signature, coordination that suggests communication faster than light. These are not the capabilities of primitives." Vreneth's scales shifted to a troubled purple color. "How did our intelligence services fail to detect these capabilities? We have been monitoring the human species for 2 generations. Because we were not really looking," Kelvin said bluntly. "We assumed they were primitive and we treated them with contempt. We never bothered to conduct a thorough assessment of their true capabilities. We saw what we expected to see and ignored anything that contradicted our assumptions. That arrogance has now cost us thousands of lives." The chamber erupted into arguments with delegates shouting at each other. Some demanded immediate retaliation while others counseled caution. A few, like Kelvin, suggested attempting to restart negotiations on more equal terms. The debate went in circles for over an hour with no consensus emerging. Then every display screen in the Council chamber flickered and changed. The security systems that were supposed to be impenetrable had been bypassed. Every monitor now showed the same image. A human woman in a military uniform sat calmly in what appeared to be a command center. She looked directly at the camera and began speaking in perfect Council common language. "Good evening, counselors," the woman said. "My name is Admiral Helen Price. I apologize for interrupting your deliberations, but I felt it was important to address some misconceptions directly. Security. Officers rushed to the technical stations trying desperately to cut off the transmission, but nothing they did had any effect. The human had somehow penetrated the most secure communications network in the known galaxy and taken complete control of it. First," Helen continued, "you are debating whether to destroy Earth. I want to make sure you understand the consequences of that decision. We have evacuated 65 million people to hidden colony ships scattered throughout the galaxy. These ships are in locations you do not know and cannot find. If you destroy our homeworld, those 65 million humans will spend the rest of their lives hunting you. They will hunt your trade ships and your colony transports. They will strike your infrastructure and your supply lines. You will not be able to travel safely anywhere. Your economy will suffer. Your people will live in fear, and we will never stop. Not in this generation or the next generation or 100 generations from now. Humans do not forgive, and we do not forget when someone destroys our home. The council chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate was staring at the screens. Second, Helen said, you assume you can destroy Earth. You assume that if you bring enough ships you can overwhelm our defenses. But you are wrong. You have not seen all of our weapons yet. You have not seen our full defensive capabilities. You have not fought us when we are truly desperate. What happened to the Velcrin fleet was a small demonstration. We were being gentle because we still hoped to avoid total war. If you attack Earth with the intent to destroy it, we will show you what human warfare really looks like. And I promise you the cost will be higher than you can imagine. Helen leaned forward and her expression became more intense. Third and most important, you need to understand something about our species. We do not want this war. We never wanted it. We asked for peace and equality. We asked to be treated with basic dignity. You offered us slavery instead. So now we are offering you a choice. Recognize humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council with equal rights and equal representation, or continue this war until one of us is completely destroyed. Those are your only two options. We will never negotiate with terrorists, the Velcrin representative shouted at the screen. Helen's expression did not change. We are not terrorists. We are a sovereign species defending our right to exist. But if you want to see what human terrorism actually looks like, then please continue threatening us. You have spent 10,000 years fighting the same civilizations in the same ways. You have no idea how creative humans can be when we are truly angry. We have studied your entire civilization. We know where your colonies are. We know your trade routes. We know your infrastructure. We know your weaknesses. And if you force us to, we will exploit every single one of them until you beg for peace. The transmission ended as suddenly as it began. The screens returned to normal and the security officers were left staring at their consoles in confusion. They had no idea how the human had penetrated their systems, and they had no idea how to prevent it from happening again. This is what you fought to protect, Kelvin said. A world of incredible diversity and complexity. This is what we will always fight to protect, Daniel replied. But we would rather build than fight, if the Council gives us that opportunity. I believe they will, Kelvin said. You have proven you can be feared. Now prove you can be trusted. That will be the harder task, but also the more important one. We understand that, Daniel said. Humanity has spent our entire history fighting each other and learning hard lessons about war and peace. We know that winning a war is easier than winning a peace, but we are ready to try. In the years that followed, humanity became active participants in galactic civilization. They shared some technologies and participated in joint research projects. They contributed to peacekeeping missions and helped resolve disputes between other species. The Wraith fleet was never revealed and never used again, but everyone knew it existed somewhere in the darkness. It was a reminder that humanity's peace had very sharp teeth. The Galactic Council never forgot the lesson Earth had taught them. They never again assumed a species was weak just because it was young. They never again tried to force client status on a civilization that reached the stars. And they never again underestimated the determination of a species fighting for its freedom. Humanity, for their part, never forgot how close they had come to enslavement or destruction. They maintained their military and kept their secrets. They stayed vigilant and prepared. Because that is what humans do. They hope for peace, but they prepare for war. They extend friendship, but they never forget betrayal. And when cornered, they do not surrender. They fight back with everything they have. And somehow, against all odds, they find a way to win.